Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 11th of November, comes to you from the Canary Islands, where I've escaped to for some winter sun, and it's Armistice Day, of course. So we start by looking at the dollar. It's just steadily recovering. It's hit a low point, coming back to test that low that we saw in September. Still looking pretty bearish on the medium and long-term charts with quite a lot of downside targets, so we're still relatively bearish there. Looking at euro dollar, we're sitting at 117.87, just nudging the 118 level, but we have been as high as 119, so we are just seeing the euro coming back now, having had a strong rise up to that level. So euro just coming off a bit short term, but medium and long term still looking pretty bullish against the dollar. Sterling sitting at 132.80, so that's looking pretty strong against that weaker dollar as well, and coming back to test that September high in the mid 130s, so looking stronger there. If we take a look at sterling against the euro, we're sitting at 112.63, and that's the highest level that we've seen since September, and if we break that level, we're now looking at sort of multi-month highs, so that's looking very strong indeed. So sterling actually starting to look very strong. A lot of it to do with hopes of a Brexit deal, of course. Bitcoin sitting at $15,400, so it's still looking very strong on all three time frames. Remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart, long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market. If we take a look now at stocks, we look first of all at the S&P 500 index. It was down very slightly yesterday, so interestingly, the surge that we saw the day before just holding, so still looking pretty bullish. We do still have this downside target on the 1% chart on the S&P 500 index, so we do need to break that level to deactivate that, because we didn't quite make it high enough to break by more than 1% to a new high. So that is interesting that is still just sitting there. And of course on the Nasdaq 100, that is the area that we are still seeing concerns in that we've got a downside target, and until we make new highs on the Nasdaq, we can't be sure that markets will fully recover. The Dow was up pretty strongly, up 1% yesterday, and if we look at the futures today, we're seeing the S&P future up 0.2%, and the Nasdaq E-mini down slightly. So we're seeing this theme at the moment where the tech stocks, the FANG stocks that carried the market up, are not really managing to break and make new highs, and so that's quite significant. The VIX volatility sitting at 25, so that's pretty steady, and the fear index, if we like, is relatively safe at this level. The FTSE 100 up 0.2% this morning. The DAX in Germany up 0.3% on the cash market, and the CAC current is up 0.75%. A massive week if we look at the CAC, how it just really rocketed, and we see that weekly candle there. Japan was up 1.7% overnight. We did see Hong Kong down just over 0.25%, and China down 0.5%. Quite a lot of political uncertainty still on Chinese and Hong Kong markets. And if we look at the Sensex, we were little changed, although we have broken to that new high, so that is significant. The Aussie market was up 1.7%, so really significant there as well. Gold sitting at 1876, just still short-term bearish and struggling. Of course, the key thing is if we make a new low, we activate a downside target, some 11% lower. If we look at silver, we see that silver is actually also just struggling on that short-term chart, having seen those big falls. US 10-year yields sitting at 0.96%, so we're just nudging this 1% level. Been a very volatile week. 25 basis points just down and then up. It's quite incredible, so really big moves there. Just looking at the tech stocks, actually, we quickly look at Apple. Apple, we're seeing here, has got this downside potential. Still 21% downside, that's in line with the Nasdaq, so we need to see new highs from Apple. Amazon was pretty heavily hit yesterday after EU justice case against them, monopoly case, and we're seeing them just falling. And if we look at Alphabet, they're also lower as well. Microsoft down 2.6%, and so that's also just looking a little bit more bearish. Looking at the energy mix now, we've got Brent crude looking much higher this morning. That's up some 2.6%, coming to nudge that high that we saw previously, so that's significant. And if we look at WTI, that's up 2.8%. So crude oil looking very strong indeed, and we've got some strong upside targets. The big thing will be, can we break this previous resistance level that we saw, and that is the sort of 46.90 level. Getting very close to that now, but and more importantly, can we just hold above the cloud here? I'd like to see 3 days of that lagging line above. US Nat Gas is sitting at 295, so it's looking stronger as well. Downside targets still hanging over, but we've got targets in both directions, and we do look to be recovering here. Storage numbers tomorrow, of course. Taking a quick look at some of the other energy mix, we've got emissions up 1.75% this morning, so they're looking stronger, got good upside targets. Looking at gas markets, we're up on MBP by just under 1%, and TTF front month we're up 1.5%, so we're seeing a recovery there as well. Looking like we will see these markets recover. German power up 1% this morning, getting back near that 40 euro mark, just not quite breaking it. If we look at some of the other markets, we're seeing that Nordic power still looking very weak, and down another 0.5% this morning. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.